Welcome back. We're getting right to some talking points in our next panel. We have a lot to discuss about the mass criminal justice reform on the way. Here to break it all down are Saima Anjam, the Vice President of the Parkside Group, and CBSN New York's urban affairs expert, Mark Peters. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Thank you so much for
First of all, how do you feel about criminal justice reform and whether there have to be some tweaks?
Well, I think there probably are going to have to be some tweaks to it. For example, right now, within 15 days of arraignment, you're obligated to produce a huge amount of discovery, including, for example, in gang shooting cases, the names of all of the witnesses. And one of the hardest things to do when you're prosecuting gang cases is keeping witnesses safe, and part of that is not releasing names and other relevant details like addresses.
Somebody else, one of the things that it was brought up is what you do in cases of domestic violence and things like that. I wonder how you feel about that.
I think it's great that there are some precautions that are being taken for sensitive populations. I think that the biggest takeaway about this criminal justice reform package is that it is a way to level the playing field. Of course, we're going to have to see how it plays out, but it's very important. You know, the courts are underfunded, the public defenders are overworked, and so a lot of cases are just moved to be dismissed, and so people are going to rightfully have more evidence at their disposal. They're going to have more access to the information that they need to make better informed decisions. So at the end of the day, this is just going to level the playing field.
But in Albany, there's going to be a tug of war, for the best way to put it, because there are going to be people who are ardent criminal justice reform advocates, and they're going to say no changes. On the other hand, many law enforcement people say, wait a minute, there may be a few tweaks. Your thoughts?
Anytime lawmakers in Albany make a really big change to the way that things have been done, there's always going to be questions about that. We'll see I think we're going to see how this is implemented and how it goes into practice. And then I guess we'll have to come back and see what kinds of tweaks should be made, if they should be made at all.
Mark, you think it should be done automatically, right?
Well, I think that there needs, whether it's going to happen, I don't know, but I think that there are some tweaks that need to be made automatically. The two that occur to me are, one, as I said, there need to be some changes to the discovery rules so that you can keep, and incoming DA Katz made a really good point about this, about the need to keep witnesses safe. The other tweak that I think we're going to need to see soon is on bail reform. While I agree that there was clearly a need for a change in the state's bail system, you do have the possibility that in some instances, for example, domestic violence, you're going to end up releasing people back into the homes where they committed the acts of domestic violence, and so I think there needs to be a tweak pretty much immediately to deal with that.
What about the idea of who's going to pay for this? It's going to be awfully costly to produce a lot of these records, where some police departments, like the NYPD, certainly have a lot of resources. Police departments around the state often do not. Some have 10, 5, 20 people. They don't have the money. Will the state have to come up with some kind of money to pay for this new mandate?
Well, so far the governor has been resistant to doing this, but I think at some point he will have to. I know the city just recently announced it was going to add $75 million to the budgets of the 5 DAs in the police department to deal with all of the new discovery demands, because especially in white-collar cases, one of the things that happens is now you have to produce all of the paper discovery, and that's a very voluminous and costly process 15 days after arraignment, as opposed to being able to wait to see how things play out.
So let's move on. As you all know, Newark is suing the city of New York over its SOTA program, that stands for Special One-Time Assistance Program. What you need to know is it's putting people in sometimes inhabitable housing in places in New Jersey. Should New York just end it? Saima.
It's undeniable that the homelessness crisis is real, and we need to do something to address it. The administration has faced some hurdles in trying to get shelter for individuals and for families. So the answer is, in the meantime, while we're trying to figure out how to address the root cause, or the causes, what do we do? How do we keep these individuals and these families sheltered and safely?
Why can't New York City come up with its own housing? Mark.
Well, New York City should be coming up with its own housing, and the fact that homelessness has increased over the last 6 years during this administration is a real problem, and the solution is not simply to take large numbers of homeless people and ship them out of the city, but But in addition to that, if New York City is going to be placing people out of the city, then they need to do it in a careful, compassionate way, which isn't sort of just taking people, placing them somewhere, not even telling the locality that they're doing this so there can be no continuity of services. This is not the way to go about doing it, and it's disingenuous to claim that this was just an attempt to get people better housing.
Mayor de Blasio was really unhappy about the decision by Newark to sue the city. This is what he had to say. Let's take a listen.
This season of the year especially, I find this extraordinary that they decide to sue the city of New York to stop working poor people from getting housing in the middle of the holiday season.
Well, this is what I would call the bah humbug defense, that it's wrong for Newark to sue because it's the holiday season. Should Newark be suing because people are being dumped into uninhabitable housing? And also, once they've been there a year, it's not the city's problem anymore, it's Newark's problem. Your opinions?
I think the two cities, for right now, they really need to figure out how to work together to ensure that people have safe and adequate housing. This is an immediate need that we need to be addressing.
I think the real question you have to ask, though, is does New York City have the right to just take its homeless problem and dump it across the river? It's not just Newark, it's Elizabeth, it's the Oranges, it's other places. I mean, can you argue that it's the economic reality, that there's no market housing here in New York, so let's send them someplace else?
Under certain circumstances, you could try to make that argument, but not under these circumstances, because if the city really believed that it could find cheaper housing in New Jersey and it really wanted to do that, then among other things, it wouldn't be taking homeless families, putting them in New Jersey with no supports, and then refusing to tell New Jersey who they've placed there and where, so there can be a continuity of services.
There's another issue here. The mayor said that it was New Jersey's problem in terms of inspecting the apartments to make sure that the apartments were habitable. They didn't have, vermin and mold and other things. Is that true? Isn't it the job of the people from New York City who are doing the placements to ascertain that these are good places for families to live? Saima.
Yes, I think that we need to be doing our due diligence, and that is what the report that came out yesterday showed. There need to be some changes made to the practices that have already been established.
I want to change the topic. Cargo bikes. The city is trying to deal with its massive delivery problems, package delivery problems, by introducing cargo bikes that were smaller and won't take up as much space as trucks. I wonder how you think it will impact drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians.
Well, I think in some ways, of course, this is sort of the carrot to the stick of congestion pricing. We're now, having imposed congestion pricing, we're now going to make it easier to have this alternative way of delivering packages. And it probably will reduce congestion to some extent, because obviously these things are smaller than trucks. They're going to get specialized parking, so they won't have to be sort of circling the block a bunch of times looking for parking. So on the whole, this strikes me as, at least a good idea worth trying.
I just want to add to that. Yeah, we undeniably have a congestion problem in New York City, and I know that any alternative could seem really appealing, but I just kind of want to flip the frame a little bit. Why is this so narrowly defined? So corporations will now have the use of these electric vehicles to be able to deliver these packages, but there's so many other communities that are being harassed for using the same vehicles. Food delivery workers, for example, who are often immigrants. They're being harassed, they're being arrested.
You're saying it's a double standard?
Yeah, their vehicles are being confiscated, and that could put their immigration status in jeopardy as well. So, this should be equitable. We should be talking about all communities equally.
Thank you both for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Next, what do New Yorkers think about the cargo bike program? You'll hear the pilot's first reactions coming up.